Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. You're watching The World Today. I am Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up. Iran declares 5 days of mourning following deaths of President Ibrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian. Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court seeks arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, plus 2 people killed and others injured in a knife attack in China. The World Today starts now. It's a dark Monday for many of the people of Iran as the death of the country's President Ibrahim Raisi filtered across the airwaves. Mr. Raisi was confirmed dead in a helicopter crash in the northwestern region of the country, along with Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and other officials. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has declared 5 days of national mourning to honor the deceased. Before the news of President Raisi's demise, he had called for prayers for those missing. Vice President Mohammad Mokhbar now assumes interim duties as president, while Deputy Foreign Minister Ali Khani has been appointed as acting foreign minister following the tragic incident.
Iran has announced 5 days of mourning after a deadly helicopter crash led to the death of President Ibrahim Raisi. Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and several others were also confirmed dead in the crash that occurred in the country's remote northwest region. Rescue team and the media can be seen at the scene of the crash, with bodies being evacuated from the site. The helicopter came down in the mountains in northern Iran during heavy fog on Sunday, with the site discovered by rescue teams in the early hours of Monday. President Raisi was returning from the inauguration of a dam on the border with Azerbaijan. The loss of Mr. Raisi, a conservative hardliner and protege of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is expected to sow further uncertainty in a country already buckling under significant economic and political strain. The death also comes at an especially fraught moment in the Middle East, with Israel's war against Hamas and the subsequent humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Meanwhile, all cultural and art activities in the country have been suspended for 7 days as many process the tragedy. The Iranian president died at the age of 63.
Our world leaders have been reacting to news of President Raisi's tragic death. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu extended his condolences earlier today and expressed profound grief to the government and people of the Islamic Republic of Iran, describing President Raisi as a leader who was passionately committed to the development of his country. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he's deeply saddened and shocked by the death of President Raisi, indicating his contribution to strengthen India-Iran bilateral relations, which will always be remembered. Iraq's Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani expressed sincere condolences and sympathy to the Iranian people, calling it a painful tragedy. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said his country will observe a day of mourning and that flags will fly at half-mast as a mark of respect for President Raisi and his companions and in solidarity with brotherly Iran. Similarly, Lebanon's Foreign Minister has announced 3 days of mourning over the incident. On the other hand, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said he's shocked by the terrible news and wished for divine consolation for such a sensitive loss. The United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan announced his stance in solidarity with Iran at this difficult time, extending heartfelt sympathies to the families of those killed in the accident. Well, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad sent his condolences to Iran, saying Mr. Raisi presented to enrich relations with everything that benefits the Syrian and Iranian people. For Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Iranian president was an outstanding politician. His death was an irreparable loss. Iran-backed militant groups Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah also send their deepest condolences to the people of Iran, while the European Council President Charles Michel expressed the bloc's sincere condolences to the families of the deceased. The European Commission had offered assistance to Iran in helping to locate Raisi's crashed helicopter. In the meantime, the Iranian government has expressed its condolences following the deaths of the country's president and other top officials. In a statement, the president's cabinet praised President Raisi as a hardworking and tireless president who served the people of Iran to help advance and progress the country. The statement also partly reads, President Raisi stood by his promise and sacrificed his life for the nation. The cabinet reaffirmed that there will not be the slightest disturbance in the administration of Iran in the wake of the deadly crash. The country says it will try to ensure everything is under control and there will be no chaos. Iran is expected to hold presidential elections within 50 days to appoint a new president. Israel-Iran relations have been known to have been fraught with tensions in the months leading up to President Raisi's death. Back in April this year, the Israel Defense Forces bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, as it continued its fight against the Hamas militant group. Iran responded weeks later with a barrage of airstrikes into Israel, which were deflected by Israeli allies, the US and Jordan. No love is lost between the two countries. It's no surprise then many Israelis reacted to news of Raisi's demise with criticism of his regime and policies.
In the Bible of the Jewish people, written, don't be happy when your enemy is falling down. So I'm not so happy, but probably everyone gets what he deserves. And that's what happened.
We don't have the problem with the people in Iran. We have the problem with the regime in Iran, and everybody knows this is the main problem. If the regime is different, like I remember in 1974, something like this, we had a peace with Iran. We don't have a problem with Iran, the people. We have a problem with the regime.
This man had a lot of blood of Iranians on his hands. Hundreds of people were taken and murdered by his secret police. He is systematically abusing women's rights. I don't get happy when anybody dies. If somebody our Torah, the Holy Torah teaches us, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice.
The past show us that when one leader of, for example, Hamas goes, one more wars came.
So who really was Ibrahim Raisi, aside being Iran's president? Well, he was a hardline cleric close to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The 63-year-old former judiciary chief came to power after a landslide victory in a poll which saw many prominent moderate and reformist candidates barred, and the majority of voters stayed away. Mr. Raisi was born in 1960 in Mashhad, Iran's second biggest city, and home to the country's holiest Shia Muslim shrine. He started attending a seminary in the holy city of Qom at the age of 15. While he was a student, he took part in protests against the Western-backed Shah, who was eventually toppled in 1979 in an Islamic revolution led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. After the revolution, he joined the judiciary and served as a prosecutor in several cities while being trained by the supreme leader who became Iran's president in 1981. Mr. Raisi's time in office was dominated by anti-government protests that swept across Iran in 2022. He also faced continuing calls from many Iranians and human rights activists for an investigation into his alleged role in the mass execution of political prisoners in the 1980s. Let's get into the war in the Middle East now. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, is seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar for war crimes and crimes against humanity. It's all connected to the October 7 attacks and the subsequent war in Gaza. Khan said the ICC's prosecution team is also seeking warrants for Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant, Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh, along with the group's military chief Mohammed Deif. The ICC, based in The Hague, has been investigating Israel's actions in the occupied territories for the past 3 years, and more recently, the actions of Hamas as well. This puts Mr. Netanyahu in the company of the Russian President Vladimir Putin, for whom the ICC issued an arrest warrant over Moscow's war in Ukraine, and the Libyan strongman Muammar Gaddafi, who was facing an arrest warrant from the ICC for alleged crimes against humanity at the time of his capture and killing in October 2011. A panel of ICC judges is now expected to consider Mr. Khan's application for the arrest warrants. Well, several protesters have been detained outside the Texas state capitol in Austin during a pro-Palestinian rally. Hundreds gathered to express their solidarity with the Palestinian people in Gaza and to demand action against police violence allegedly targeting pro-Palestinian demonstrations. The demonstration follows weeks of mass arrests and clashes at pro-Palestinian rallies across the United States, calling for the government and educational institutions to cut ties with Israel.
It's ridiculous that they did not open the Capitol grounds to allow this protest. So we're here to stand up against that. We're also here to bring the message of revolution and to talk to people about the reason this genocide is happening in this system of capitalism, imperialism, and how to actually overthrow that.
None of us here are intimidated. We're very well organized. This is a peaceful protest. It's up to the police to see how they respond, which we don't know because of the current state of repression of our freedom of speech.
It's an intimidation tactic that the state is using that is not working on us. It's these empty threats of arrest are meant to be just that. They're threats, and we recognize it for what it is.
Let's bring in the VOA's Ricky Rosson. She's in Tel Aviv. Ricky, great to see you again. Let's talk about the arrest warrants against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. They mark the first time the ICC has targeted the top leaders of a close ally of the United States. What is this signaling to Washington?
Well, I think that the arrest warrants may have brought Israel and the U.S., specifically Netanyahu and Biden, closer together because it's being seen in Israel across the political spectrum and in Washington as an outrageous moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel, Netanyahu, and the defense minister, and the leaders of Hamas, the three military leaders of Hamas. So it's something that Israelis are sure will make the U.S. respond in an angry and outraged kind of way to this action by the International Criminal Court.
And what has Prime Minister Netanyahu said about this? I mean, we all know that he's damning the consequences with the UN at this time, wading off every criticism for his war in Gaza. He really doesn't care what people think of him at this point.
He doesn't. He seems to act with impunity. But as I said, this seems to be the one thing that has brought together the opposition, the political opposition in Israel. I just came from a huge demonstration against Netanyahu and his government in front of the parliament in Jerusalem, and everybody there is condemning this move by the criminal court as something, as I said, which is outrageous in creating a moral equivalency between Israel and Hamas.
But is it strengthening belief and trust in the Netanyahu government? Yoav, I believe, did make an announcement over the weekend about wanting to resign. You know, if it is seen that Netanyahu has no plans for Gaza after the war. So how does, this allegation, this warrant from the ICC help to unite Netanyahu's government in light of tensions within?
The problem is it's a question of numbers. Netanyahu's coalition has 64 out of 120 seats. So just now, the summer session of the parliament opened, and there were 3 no confidence motions being brought against Netanyahu and his government, and all 3 of them were defeated because they don't have enough power in the opposition to bring down the government, force new elections, and force any new policy. So it's just a question of numbers, coalition numbers.
Yes, Ricky, and many, unfortunately, are pointing fingers at Netanyahu's government as being behind the helicopter crash that killed the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi. We know that Israel and Iranian relations have been tense for years. I mean, Israel has accused Iran of formulating nuclear weapons targeted at Israel. They've talked about a red line being crossed, and they've also talked about Iran's support of Hamas militants, and Iran being one of the problem countries when it comes to, these terrorists and their activities in Israel. What has been the Israeli government's response to this?
It's been categorically denied by all members of the Israeli political and military establishment, and most analysts are also saying that it would not be something, while Israel is in the middle of fierce fighting in Gaza, as well as daily bombardment coming from Lebanon, it would not be something that Israel would undertake. For one thing, many analysts are saying they're not sure that Raisi would have been considered the person who would take the place of Khamenei as the next supreme leader. And so it wouldn't be worthwhile for Israel to carry out such an assassination attempt in the middle of intensive fighting on the borders of Israel.
But in the meantime, Ricky, perhaps condolence messages to Iran? Have we heard anything of the likes from the Israeli government?
The fact that Israel is most probably, according to all accounts, both within Israel and outside of Israel, not responsible for the death of Raisi as an assassination, does not mean in any way that people are not happy about it. He was seen as an especially hardline enemy of Israel, someone who inspired his proxies, both Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, to attack Israel and to continue attacking Israel. And so I don't think there's anybody in Israel who is shedding a tear for his demise.
I mean, we did hear a group of responders to the death of the Iranian president and the foreign minister there. No love lost between Israel and Iran, and relations, of course, before then had been fraught with a lot of tension. Israel bombing the Iranian consulate in Damascus in Syria. The U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has encouraged Prime Minister Netanyahu to attach a political strategy, he says, post Gaza war to this war against Hamas. He thinks that it would be more beneficial if Israel did have, a plan in mind. And I think the U.S. government is expecting that Israel would share that plan with its closest ally in the West, the United States. How is that coming along?
Well, this has been the American position now for many, many months. Right now, it's gaining a certain amount of power because within Israel, within Netanyahu's coalition government, his defense minister made a speech saying that he didn't agree that the army could continue to fight indefinitely and be left with security control of Gaza without having an end game, a day after plan, because what has happened is that in places where Israel finished fighting months ago, Hamas has regrouped and Israel is back in those places in northern and central Gaza, fighting the same Hamas militants that they thought they had finished, but can't finish because there's no plan for anybody who will take over from Hamas. Also, Benny Gantz, who is an opposition politician but has joined the war cabinet after October 7th, made the same claims against Netanyahu that there has to be a day after plan, because otherwise there can never be any end to the war.
Pretty interesting times for the Israel-Hamas war and in Israel. But just a quick recap to Ibrahim Raisi's death. What impacts will that have, do you think, Ricky, on the Middle East peace process and perhaps the war in Gaza as well?
Most analysts are saying that there won't be any immediate effect because Iran will be very concerned with its own internal domestic affairs, electing a new president and reconstituting the government and dealing with protests which may come up because there was a lot of opposition to Raisi within Iran. And so most analysts are saying that Iran probably will not look towards more attacks against Israel, more encouraging its proxies to do more than it has already done, because it would be turning inward.
A lot to talk about here. Ricky, we thank you for your time. You're in transit at the moment, walking from place to place. Thanks again for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you.
We're off to other stories now, to the tragedy in China now, where 2 people have been killed, 10 others injured in a knife attack at a primary school in southern Jiangxi province. Attack took place at about midday at the Wufang Mingde Elementary School in Guizhou City. The ages of the children at the school are from 6 to 12. Police said the attack was carried out by a 45-year-old woman who used a fruit knife. She has been controlled. It's currently unclear why the primary school was targeted. An investigation is underway to determine the motive of the attacker. Residents are voting in the fifth phase of India's election in 49 seats across 6 states. The first 4 phases of the vote were held on April 19th, April 26th, May 7th, and May 13th. According to local media, the Himalayan territory of Ladakh is leading with the highest voter turnout at 67.15%. Prime Minister Narendra Modi urged women and young voters to exercise their franchise. The next 2 phases fall on May 25th and June 1st. Results are expected to be announced on June 4th. It's been celebrations in the Dominican Republic as President Luis Abinader wins a second term in elections. Clinching victory in the first round, the president vowed unity and impartial leadership as he declared victory after rivals conceded on Sunday night, having secured a sufficiently wide margin to win without needing to go to a second round face-off. Mr. Abinader's win appears to be an endorsement of his handling of the economy and tough policies towards migration from neighboring Haiti. With just over half of voting centers reporting late on Sunday, he held 58.85% of the vote. While final results were pending, the 56-year-old president had clearly won, well over 50% needed to rule out a runoff election.
No hay que perder ni un minuto.
Staying with newly inaugurated presidents, Taiwanese President-elect Lai Ching-te has urged Beijing to choose dialogue over confrontation. He was speaking at his inauguration in Taipei. Mr. Ching-te asked China to stop its military and political threats, indicating that peace was the only choice and that Beijing had to respect the choice of the Taiwanese people. He went on to mention that he's always believed that if a leader of a country puts the people's welfare above all, then peace in the Taiwan Strait, mutual benefits, and prosperous coexistence would be common goals. China responded by saying Mr. Lai had sent dangerous signals and sought to undermine peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. The 64-year-old takes over from Tsai Ing-wen, who had been leading Taiwan for 8 recent years. Mr. Lai was vice president during Tsai's second term. To Europe now, London's High Court has ruled that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has a right to appeal in his final challenge against extradition to the United States. The legal victory for Mr. Assange was celebrated by dozens of his supporters as they rallied outside the court in the British capital. Mr. Assange's legal team argued that the judges should not accept the assurances given by U.S. prosecutors that he could seek to rely upon the rights and protections under the U.S. First Amendment. His team made the case that Assange could be discriminated against on the basis of his nationality as an Australian-born foreign national. In a short ruling, the judges said the U.S. submissions were not sufficient, granting Assange permission to full appeal in relation to the points of freedom of speech and nationality. However, a date has not been set for the next hearing.
I feel we have to do what little we can as every individual person in the world to try and help Julian and to save his life. I mean, the judges here today have the opportunity to show that it is not a crime in Britain to be a journalist, to tell the truth, and to take somebody, put them in prison, in Belmarsh prison for 5 years, when they have not had a single criminal charge put against them in this country, and to be destroying their health in solitary confinement. You can't look at this great big hall that's said to be the Royal Courts of Justice and think that's justice. And any journalist, you know, you're a journalist, you know, if he goes down for extradition, everybody is going to feel too scared to speak the truth. We're all going to be cowed, and the people who are our masters in the American empire, they're just going to rule over us. I don't want us to be a vassal state of the American empire. I want us to be a country that speaks up and supports people who speak for peace and truth in the world.
My message to journalists all over the world is you need to be fighting for Julian Assange in your own interest, because if he is sent to the US today or just after this hearing, it will be a chilling effect on journalism all over the world, because it will mean that the US has massive overreach to prosecute people who publish the truth about war crimes, including rape and torture and murder, all over the world. He has never even set foot in the US, not a US citizen. How dare they be able to extradite him from Britain? And also, all of the states of the Western governments have gone after him for allegations of sexual assault on 2 women in Sweden, which were found to have been totally unsubstantiated and dropped. And they kept it alive for 9 years so that the media all called him a rapist, and yet he was never charged. He made himself available for questioning, but they didn't really want to prosecute him for that. They wanted to take him into captivity and send him to the US. And we've been saying this from Women Against Rape since 2010.
Over in New York, the attorney of former U.S. President Donald Trump is grilling Michael Cohen about stealing from the former president's organization and how the alleged hush money payments unfolded as the defense tries to discredit the prosecution's key witness in the New York criminal trial. Mr. Trump was accompanied by several allies in court. New York State prosecutors have aimed to use Mr. Cohen's testimony to tie together their allegations that Trump broke the law by falsifying business records to reimburse Cohen and conceal the hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. The former president has pleaded not guilty and has denied the affair. Judge Juan Merchan says he expects closing arguments will be next Tuesday. The US and Niger have agreed that American troops will leave the country no later than September 15. Both nations announced a joint statement on Sunday saying the two countries had reached a disengagement agreement to effect the withdrawal of US forces, which has already begun. The deal was reached after marathon talks between the two countries in Niamey. The US had relied on Niger as its primary base for monitoring regional jihadist activity. American forces have used 2 military bases in Niger to monitor Islamist militant groups in the Sahel. The U.S. built a $100 million military base there 6 years ago in the central city of Agadez. It's 750 kilometers northeast of Niamey. It's played a key role in the U.S. strategy to combat jihadists in West Africa. The U.S. has more than 1,000 troops stationed at the base. It is the second Western power to withdraw from Niger. And over in the Democratic Republic of Congo, streets of the capital Kinshasa appear calm after the army announced it had foiled a coup attempt. A coup attempt took place in the early hours of Sunday at the Palais de la Nation. Armed men in military uniform raided the office of President Felix Tshisekedi, who was not present at the time, but the army engaged the assailants, killing some of them and restoring calm to the city. DR Congo Army spokesperson Brigadier General Sylvain Ekenge said 50 suspects, including 3 Americans and a naturalized British citizen, have been detained. Local media reports said the assailants were members of the New Zaire movement, linked to formerly exiled DR Congo politician Christian Malanga, who has acquired American citizenship. Mr. Ekenge said Malanga was shot dead at the presidential palace after he resisted arrest by security forces. His son, Marcel Malanga, was among the 3 American nationals arrested over the alleged coup attempt.
The armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo are informing national and international public that an attempted coup d'etat has been thwarted by the defense and security forces. The attempt involved foreigners and Congolese. These foreigners and Congolese were put out of action, including their leader. The armies of the Democratic Republic of the Congo are asking the population to go about their business freely and peacefully. The defense and security forces are in full control of the situation.
Let's check in on politics in South Africa, where the highest court has barred former President Jacob Zuma from running for parliament in next week's general election. The Constitutional Court ruled that his 15-month prison sentence for contempt of court, a crime under South African law, disqualifies him. Mr. Zuma was convicted in 2021 for refusing to testify at an inquiry investigating corruption during his presidency, which ended in 2018. He has been campaigning under the banner of the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party after falling out with the governing African National Congress. MK Secretary General Sele Ngubane said the party was disappointed with the ruling, but it would not affect the party's campaign, and Mr. Zuma's face would remain on the ballot paper for the May 29th election. As the war in Sudan rages on, UN humanitarians are warning the brutal violence, famine, disease, and widespread displacement are haunting 9 million Sudanese people, including 4 million children. According to a spokesperson for UN Humanitarian Affairs Coordination Office, famine and disease are closing in. Half of Sudan's population, some 25 million people, are estimated to be in desperate need of humanitarian aid.
In Sudan, half of the population, 25 million people, need humanitarian aid. Famine is closing in, diseases are closing in, the fighting is closing in on civilians, especially in Darfur. The overall response plan aims to reach and support 15 million of the worst affected people. Collectively, we ask for $2.7 billion American dollars. As of today, 4.5 months into the year, we have received 12% of that. This is not just an underfunded appeal. It is a catastrophically underfunded appeal.
13 months of war in Sudan, 9 million people displaced, which represents around 17% of the population, and the largest internal displacement crisis in the world today. Close to 16,000 people have died and 33,000 have been injured. But the toll of the war is probably much higher.
There is what I can term a silent emergency happening in Uganda, where 300,000 have come over the past 2.5 years, most of whom have come from South Sudan and the DRC. We have had recent arrivals from Sudan as well. This year alone, about 19,000 refugees have come from Sudan.
Well, the situation in Darfur is concerning for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk. He is renewing his calls on both parties to the conflict in Sudan to end hostilities, voicing his horror at the situation in El Fasher. Spokesperson for the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Shamdasani, says Mr. Turk spoke with both warring leaders, urging both generals to take action immediately.
Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is horrified by the escalating violence in El Fasher in Darfur, where hostilities between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces, backed by their respective allied armed groups, are having a deeply devastating toll on civilians. At least 58 civilians are reported to have been killed and 213 others injured in El Fasher since fighting dramatically escalated last week, and these figures are certainly an underestimate. He also called on them to put aside entrenched positions and take specific, concrete steps to cease hostilities and to ensure the effective protection of civilians, as is their obligation under international human rights law and humanitarian law. This is also consistent with their commitments under the Jeddah Declaration, agreed in May 2023. We warn both commanders that fighting in El Fasher, where more than 1.8 million residents and internally displaced people are currently encircled and at imminent risk of famine, would have a catastrophic impact on civilians, and it would deepen intercommunal conflict with disastrous humanitarian consequences.
In the coastal town of El Amra, Tunisia, migrants from sub-Saharan Africa are asking to be released in order to reach Europe as tensions mount in the country over the government's handling of the migrant crisis. Law enforcement has expanded its presence in the two agricultural towns where roughly 83,000 Tunisians live, among a growing number of migrants from around the world. Hundreds of Tunisians marched in the streets of Djerbaneh this weekend, demanding that the Tunisian government expel the migrants. President Kais Saied has taken a hard stance against migrants, accusing them of bringing violence and crime into the country. The UN Human Rights Office says it's worried about the situation of migrants in Tunisia, as well as a rise in the use of dehumanizing and racist rhetoric against black migrants and black Tunisians.
We're very concerned by the increased targeting in Tunisia of migrants, mostly from the south of the Sahara, and individuals and organizations working to assist them. At the same time, we're witnessing a rise in the use of dehumanizing and racist rhetoric against black migrants and black Tunisians. Our office has recorded incidents of arbitrary arrest and detention of human rights defenders, lawyers, and journalists who are critical of the government, as well as the government's migration policies. Reported raids in the past week on the Tunisia Bar Association undermine the rule of law and violate international standards on the protection of the independence and function of lawyers. Such actions clearly constitute forms of intimidation and harassment. The rule of law must be upheld and those arbitrarily detained, including for defending the rights of migrants and for combating racial discrimination, released. The human rights of all migrants must be protected, and xenophobic hate speech must stop.
Here in Nigeria, the Lagos State government has launched sensitization tools for voluntary compliance with physical planning permit laws and obtaining planning permits. The State Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development, Mr. Olumide Oluyinka, who unveiled the sensitization tool, says the initiative is to increase public awareness about physical planning issues and approval to prevent individuals from falling victims to fraudsters producing fake building permit documents.
New structures spring up in Lagos State every day. Monitoring various regulatory agencies show some buildings under construction check all the boxes, but not everyone goes by the books, as other property owners fail to secure the necessary building permits and face the consequences of demolition by the state government.
We will start from there.
The Lagos State Physical Planning Permit Authority is at GRA Ikeja to unveil tools that will educate residents on all the steps to get the necessary building approvals.
LASPA has also designed a car stickers where at the back of a car or in front of a car you can place a sticker telling us spontaneously what planning permit is all about. Why you need to, for the information of the public, we have seen where developers have actually processed fake planning permits. There are a lot of buildings there that we have been able to apprehend with fake planning permits. So we are using this opportunity to tell people to be aware. When you have commissioned a third party to help you process planning permits, please be very careful. Don't patronize touts. Our offices, we have 50 offices all over the states.
These tools will be used to educate residents across all local government areas to ensure compliance with the building regulations.
Want to prepare yourself for anything in life, you need to plan. And that is why physical planning is very important. Nobody, again, will claim that he or she was not informed. Or I do not know how to get the permit. My own counsel to all of the people who are involved in this is that they should make sure that it reaches far and wide, so that the whole world will know that we have done everything that we need to do in terms of sensitizing our people how to build right.
The importance of knowledge, as we all know, cannot be underestimated, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's a legal principle that states that people cannot avoid liability for breaking the law, claiming that they were unaware of it. So I must commend LASPA for taking these strides to make sure that the information is disseminated widely.
A representative of real estate business owners appealed to the government for an extension of the 90-day window for property owners without permits to obtain them.
Thank God for the 90 days that the governor has magnanimously given. If we want to appeal, we also appeal for additional 90 days. You know why? Because, number one, so that we can have enough time to do the same. So that we can, by the end, let's say by the end of the year, the government should give us towards the end of the year, come and regularize all your papers. So that we stand on a fresh note in January 2025.
The State Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development responds to some of these requests, as he gives assurances that buildings with approvals will get stickers.
From this exercise, we are going to get down to the nooks and corners of every community and societies in this state. And we are going to come out with, remember during population census, there is a sticker on every house all over Nigeria. All over Nigeria. We are going to have the same thing on all approved buildings. There is going to be a design sticker with a QR code on all approved buildings in the whole of Lagos State. And those of us with a smartphone, and our tenants, once you get to a place, from that sticker, you'll be able to judge that, okay, this building has an approval. And you take the QR code, you get the details. And regarding time extension, my chairman, sir, if you can write to me or to the governor, chairman, sir, all people concerned, seeking for extension of time on this amnesty, I'm very sure it's something that the governor will look into.
Different media being deployed by LASPA to ensure residents receive the message that puts everyone on the same page as the Lagos State government with regards to its building safety laws.
Finally on the program, 2 Chow Chow dogs painted black and white to look like pandas have caught visitors' attention at the Chinese zoo in Jiangsu. Visitors marveled at the paintings. Some visitors were quoted as saying that the dogs looked really cute. The zoo, which lacks real pandas, faced criticism from state media and others over concerns of possibly misleading visitors and mistreating the dogs. Zoo officials, however, claimed the dogs were not harmed, noting that normal people dye their hair. According to media reports, staff members painted the dogs to attract more visitors to their zoo. The duo, dyed to look like pandas, was first unveiled to the public on May 1st and will be on display, if you're in Jiangsu that is, and in the closure every day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Well, you can't blame them. They are really cute. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.